Thank you so much, Krisia, for your presentation. We've had some questions.
Yeah, we had some good questions in the comments in the chat. I tried to take notes, but I'm not so good at that.
I can help you with that because I have them. So I have them all. So shall I just, let's address those probably because they are from our participants. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's see. Gabi had some questions. First of all, just if you remember at the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that you have taught already in 8 different countries.
Yeah.
And Gabi is wondering how the issue of student confidence was different in these countries.
Well, just to be clear, I've lived in 8 different countries. I've taught English in 3 countries,
okay.
But I've taught people from all around the world. So I guess in a way it counts. But yeah, so here's the thing. I noticed that there are very small differences between the countries themselves. Okay, the biggest differences in confidence I've noticed is between men and women in my classes in all of those countries. So whether it was, the women that I taught in Spain or the women that I taught in Turkey or the women that I teach here in Denmark, I'm still dealing with the same issues where even if they're at the same level as other men in their company, they don't feel like their English is good enough. Whereas the men who are at the same level are like, I don't know why my boss sent me here to do this English course because my English is fine. So I think that they're more similar across the board. Kind of it's the difference between this. Is it a geographical difference or is it a gender difference? And I think there's much more similarities between the genders in the different countries than there is a difference between the separate countries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, and at times they may need something different from English. So if their English is good enough, but still they experience that glass ceiling above their heads. So, and this is what you try and bridge incorporating coaching and mentoring besides teaching.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me. That's actually, it's become my main focus as a teacher, that I really spend most of my time on making sure that my students are, doing those things using the GROW technique. They're moving towards their goals and they've set themselves up to succeed. And so I help them do that. And then when I teach them, it makes sense. It's logical. It's a logical step towards their goals as opposed to something else that they have to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you mentioned the GROW technique that you apply when it comes to teaching. Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned the SMART or even smarter techniques. So why do you prefer the GROW technique? That's why it was featured in your presentation. And how are these two different for?
They're not different. I think the smarter goals, the smart or smarter goals are a part of the G in the GROW technique. G is about setting goals and setting clear goals that are achievable. We've all heard of SMART goals. I think, I don't know, people, you can write in the comments if you know anything about SMART goals, but it's specific, measurable, actionable.
Attainable. Yes.
Attainable, realistic.
Time bound.
And time bound. That's SMART. Yeah.
ER is evaluated and reviewed as well.
No, there's a difference. So I'm using Michael Hyatt's system, which those last two, actually the first R isn't realistic. It's actually risky. So having a goal that pushes you beyond what you feel like you're capable of is a really, I think it's very useful, as long as it's not ridiculous. That's a different R. But yeah, risky in that I have to give something to make this happen. And I think that makes a huge difference. So we're changing the first R, but then the E and R are exciting and relevant.
Wow.
So it's not just, oh, I want to speak better English because, I want to take an exam. Yeah, that's fine, but it's not exciting and relevant. Why are you taking the exam? Where do you want to go with it? Is it because you want to study abroad? Is it because you have a boyfriend from another country? And then it's not about the exam. It's about actually learning English so you can do something. So it may not require a change in, what you're planning to do. It's a change in your focus on the English class.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So I think sorry, just to answer your question, in that grow technique, we're looking first at the goals, but then we look at, okay, we take the next step and say, well, what is the reality for the student in this situation? How much money do you have? How much time do you have? How much effort are you actually willing to put into this? So it's one thing having a goal, but unless you figure out what it takes to achieve that goal, you're going to be stuck at the end of the course with the same goal. So I think the grow technique takes it beyond just setting the goals and into achieving them. And people often forget that last step with the will. That's the last step of the grow technique. And it is to figure out what commitment you need to make this happen. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to sacrifice, half an hour of Netflix a night to achieve your goal? So things like that are really a part of it. And so, yeah, so it's not separate. I think the SMART goals or the smarter goals go very well with the grow technique.
Okay, it's amazing. And I love that will part of the grow technique, because it takes, like, the teacher is responsible as well, for teaching, but the teacher cannot learn for the students. So exactly. The students need to be committed, and just clarifying it before we start working together, what they are willing to be responsible for, and how much time they have to dedicate to their studies, for instance, is very important to be realistic.
Yes.
Regarding the outcomes and our expectations, because it can change our expectations. So
I mean, and this also works in large classrooms. You may have a class where, you're expected to assign a certain amount of homework every week or whatever during the course. But if the students haven't bought in, if they haven't decided that that's the amount of time they're going to dedicate to it, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time and theirs. Why not adjust it so that what they need to do fits into what they're willing to do? And then everyone can be successful.
Exactly. And during your presentation, Krisia, you mentioned that you like to incorporate coaching and mentoring into assessment questions and conversation topics as well, and writing assignment. Can you give us examples of how you apply, these techniques?
I don't know if I'm allowed to share a link, but I have a PDF that I send to, for people who join my mailing list. And it's literally some journal topics. So I encourage people to start writing a journal in English, which is something that you don't need a teacher for. Yeah. But when I have students, I tell them, first day, get a journal, start writing in English every day. And so to get them going, I give them some topics and I have it on my website. Can I tell you where it is, or is it something that you prefer not to say?
I think we are interested in that.
Yeah, it's at lightningenglish.com/goals, GOALS. And so when people go there and join my mailing list, they get this PDF, a download of some goal setting journal prompts. So over 7 or 8 days, I can't remember, I think it's 8 journal prompts. Each one is a page. It basically sit down for 5 minutes and think about this question and write, how you feel. So how do you feel right now when you speak English? How do you want to feel? These kinds of things to really just get straight in their mind what they want. Because if they don't know what they want, they're not going to know when they get it.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're not going to know that they're successful if they don't know what they were trying to achieve. So having people really think about what it is they're trying to get from your course is fantastic, I think, for getting success.
So with these questions, you identify where the students are and where they would like to get to.
Yeah.
Because they may not be used to living their lives exactly. In these terms. So
especially younger students, kids who are still in school, or teenagers, even university students, they're not used to this kind of, what do you want? Nobody usually asks them that. It's like, oh, I have to do English. Yeah, but what are you going to do with it? What would you like to do? How would you like to feel? And I think for me, what makes it partly coaching is that focus on how do you want to feel when you're done here? You know, so it's not just about, okay, put all this information into my head. I pass the exam and I'm finished. It's about, well, someone speaks to me and asks, do you speak English? I want to be able to say yes with a smile, you know. That's a big deal. And that will motivate them to do those things that they need to do, that will part, all those things that they need to do, get motivated by that feeling that they want to have at the end.
This is so important that you are talking about, Krisia, because I think like you look at university students, until at the end of university, students are told what to do. And then we wonder that they do not have goals. Like a lot of them, they feel lost because they are used to being told what to do.
Yeah.
And they cannot think for themselves. And Gabi has a question related to what you've been just talking about. And she says that she loves the idea of integrating coaching into assessment questions, but she would like to know how to do this.
Yeah, so I think many of us have had to do assessments, you know, to find out what level students are before they start. You know, you want to know, can they use the past tense? Can they use the future? You know, can they use the conditionals? There are some questions that we often have as a list. I take those questions and I kind of alter them a little bit. Instead of saying, for example, talk about a vacation that you went on or a trip you went on, to get them to talk about the past, I would say, talk about a time when you felt strong or you felt great, you know, so that I can hear what makes them tick. You know what I mean? So that I'm not just wasting their time and mine with these questions just to assess their grammar skills. So yeah, it's personalization. I'm just reading the comments as it goes. But it's also about finding out their reality. That's the R in this coaching. It's finding out who they are. What is their reality? If you ask them to say, oh, for example, talk about your first day in English class. How did you feel? When they talk about that, they're going to share with you maybe what is blocking them from learning. Because if they walked in and they were excited and then they started and it was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do this. That allows you as a teacher to say, okay, that's where they're blocked. I'm going to help them to get past that. I'm going to help that person to feel like they can do it. So I think that's where the coaching comes in. Finding out what their reality is and what their goals are through your assessment questions. So instead of saying like a general, where would you like to be in 5 years' time, to get them to talk about the future, you could say, what would you like to do with your English when it's better? For example, I'm making this up on the spot, but it's really, so then you're asking them to use the future, but you're asking them about their goals.
Yeah, and you are just a step away from where they are as opposed to 5 years into the future.
I like this question. So do you think this is something that only experienced teachers can really do? Novice teachers are typically too focused on what they actually do instead of what their students do. Totally agree. I remember my first couple of years as a teacher, it was like, I couldn't even think of changing anything that was in the book. I would like to challenge newer teachers to just take one question or one conversation topic per lesson. So when you're doing your lesson plan and it says, talk about A or B or such and such, to practice the grammar point or to practice the vocabulary, see if you can shift that slightly, add a word, take away a word, mix it up a bit so that they're talking about what they want in the future, or they're talking about what time they have now to work on their English, or they're talking about what challenges they have in learning English. So that if you take one thing per lesson, then all of a sudden you are collecting information about your students. You're getting them used to talking about this stuff, also in pairs or in small groups with each other. And they realize that, oh my gosh, I have this challenge, but so does she. Okay, I'm not alone. So all of this can really help your students to move forward with very little work from the teacher. So yeah, I definitely think it's possible for new teachers, and it's possible with all of the other things we're doing, to literally just change one question, and you change it in your lesson plan, and you keep that. Next time you do that lesson, you have it. Change another thing the next time. So it doesn't have to be all across the board all at once, but yeah, it can be little by little. Someone asked earlier about larger classes. I can't remember the question now. I couldn't write the whole thing down. I'll scroll up. Is coaching even possible in classes that reach really
the
high?
question, I have that.
Oh, good. Okay.
Says that many teachers who teach really big classes may feel that reflecting on confidence building techniques takes their attention away from planning, marking, and all other responsibilities they have as teachers. What do you think?
Yeah. And I think it's all about integrating it into your planning. Just being aware of these things that, that I shared with you today. And I hope people will have other suggestions and ideas, but just being aware of that, just being aware that there are students in your classroom who are competent enough to use English, but don't have the confidence. And if you just give them a little push and give them a little bit of the confidence they need, they're going to step out and kind of bloom. Just knowing that as you plan your lesson is going to make a difference, so it's not about spending extra time. It's like spending the time that you're already spending, but keeping this in mind as you do it.
It's a little bit like being, I don't know, a psychologist or
there is a lot of psychology in it,
because you need to feel your students and like be sensitive enough to see and feel, or what's going on. And so even though we are talking about students' confidence, but I think that teachers' confidence is also very important. And I had a question in the chat earlier, so how teachers' confidence may or can influence students' confidence in the classroom.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've found really useful for me is to do a lot of these things I'm telling my students to do, but in another language. Okay. So I am learning Danish. I've been living here for 11 years, but everyone speaks English. So yeah, I mean, I'm at a point now in Danish where I can go out and have business meetings and things in Danish, but I still feel like there's work to do, just like my students who are, at C1 or even C2 level English, they feel like, but I still could use, some help. So I get in there and I do the things that I'm trying to tell my students to do and see what it feels like, I think having the empathy to understand what your students are feeling is really, really a big part of this. And I think that's the idea of a mentor, someone who's been there, done that, and is sharing the process, So I think a lot of it is about getting out there and doing that. A lot of language teachers are in foreign countries, or they do have another language that they're working on. So it's so easy to just take some of these exercises and try them out yourself. The one with the social media that I gave in the example from one of my students, try it. Go find groups in that language instead of the groups, find groups of English teachers in a different country speaking their language, talking about learning English or teaching English. I'm in English teachers groups in Denmark. So Danish people who teach English to Danish students, chatting in Facebook in Danish about teaching English. I know it's a bit meta, but but it means that I get in there and I have to get over all those fears that my students have when they do this. And once I do it and push myself to do it, I feel that confidence. So it's really easy to then turn around and go to my students and say, hey, try this. I know how it feels. Guess what? I've done it. In fact, go join that group. You can see the posts that I've put up in your language, so just, showing them that you're a real person, empathizing with them. You don't have to be perfect, and showing them that not being perfect is still okay. Confidence isn't about doing it perfectly. Confidence is about just doing it scared.
It's just being a little bit out of your comfort zone, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And it becomes more doable. Exactly. And there's a question coming
there's a question about social media. helping students create groups and get confidence. So I think that social media is a wonderful way for students to practice expressing themselves in English in real life situations. Yes, it often provides incorrect language models. That is absolutely true. It should not be their only source of English. It shouldn't be the only place they're interacting. They're also, they're in the classroom, you're giving them things to read, they're getting other input of good, clean English, and having this conversation saying, look, you're going to be on social media. People are writing stuff that is not good English. But having your students out there writing or talking, having conversations, even imperfectly, is going to build their confidence. And yeah, it's part of our job as teachers to make sure now when they come back into the classroom and they're making these mistakes that we can say, hey, that's something that you can do on Twitter, but we don't do this in the classroom. You know what I mean? So, because they're going to go out there and they're going to use social media. And if you go on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever you're using, and you use classroom English in those areas, it doesn't work. You can't use the same English. So they have to understand that there are different kind of levels or different grades of English that they need to use. But using this to build their confidence gets them back in the classroom ready to do more. And I'm all for it. I think it does much more good than it does harm.
I love this because this is a way of bridging the gap between the classroom and the real world. In a sense, so it's just imagine when students are not exposed to the real world and their course comes to an end, and
Yep.
Hello world, I'm here, and it can be so terrifying. But what I can see is that during your lessons, you have them get used to real life interaction.
Yeah, I kind of hold their hand and let them get out into the real world, but knowing that they can kind of ask me for help if they need it or if they're not comfortable. And so then by the time they finish with me, they've been out in the real world doing real things. I told you about my student who actually did a job application and applied for a job online, as part of his class. And that was so scary for him. I mean, come on. But do you think he would have done it without me? There's no way he would have finished that course and then just done it. But because he had done it once with me, he knew that I had checked over his stuff. He felt comfortable. He sent in the application. He got the letter back. He got some feedback. And he was like, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I can do this. So I think that's what I'm talking about.
Exactly. And I actually love these examples, because this is what we can learn so much from, like the one with the social media example that you mentioned before, the work abroad example. And I love this because when you first introduced this and started talking about, join a group, like 10 posts, and I was just asking that, okay, so what can students benefit from liking posts, for instance, but then you went on and I could just see this step-by-step approach and post language and confidence-wise as well. So it's amazing because first you just get familiar with the group, join the group, just look around, with your classroom environment.
Get a feeling for it, feel it out,
Feeling more confident, yes. And then, okay, now you're okay with that, take the next baby step, like 10 posts. And to be able to you need to read those posts. So it includes reading skills, for instance, understanding what you like, and then comment and answer replies. It's so nicely built, really. So once they get familiar and feel good with one step, then you take them further.
So there's another question. So it's about the gender difference.
How do you address the confidence gender difference in your classroom you mentioned earlier?
I have been struggling with this for years, ever since I realized that this was what was going on. And it wasn't all the time. It hasn't been, all my 16 years of teaching that I noticed this. It was just after about 3 or 4 years, and I was teaching at this immersion course, and it was a very intensive 5-day course. And then I had a new group the next week. So I was, there was a lot of turnover. And so it was easy to start seeing patterns. And I was seeing patterns because the students all got assessed before they came in to find out what level they were at. And I noticed that students would come into the classroom, they're at the same level, but invariably, the men would think their English was better and the women would think their English was worse. And it was just time and time again. I'm like, what? And so when I came here to Denmark and I started going out into companies and teaching company classes, I noticed that the difference was just as distinct. In fact, even slightly more so, which was surprising between Turkey and Denmark. When you think of the different cultures, I think people would expect a bigger gender difference in Turkey than in Denmark. But what I've noticed is that when we get a group of people together, you have some people who are there. So I'm talking about men and women, but there are, like I said, there's all sorts of other lines. For example, I had a student, a gay male student who was in that same situation, so it's very interesting, all of these lines, but you'll have a mixed group of students with confident and less confident. And you go in and you start teaching. And what happens is the ones who are already confident, who don't even feel like they need to be there because they're so confident with their English, even though they're making mistake after mistake after mistake. You're like, oh my gosh, I guess some of you in the audience, some attendees, other teachers can relate to this. You've got that student who doesn't realize that their English is crap. and they just want to talk and you're correcting them and they're like, whatever, like they don't care. So they're there. And the way to handle that is you need to point out to them that they're making mistakes. You need to do the error correction. You need to kind of show them that, hey, when you say this, it means this, and that's not what you're trying to say. The problem is there are other people sitting in that same classroom who are thinking, oh my gosh, I would have said the same thing. So it's a good thing I didn't say anything. So the more you're helping these people who are confident, the more you're hurting the ones who are less confident. And that is a problem. So for me, it has been about really setting it up at the beginning to make it very clear that I want everyone to speak and I want everyone to take part, and I'm going to be correcting errors, but that's not a bad thing, so I'm really kind of changing my language to suit the less confident students. Those confident students there's nothing I can do to get rid of their confidence. They've got it. So what I do is kind of adjust my language in the classroom so that I can boost the ones who really need that extra boost. It's not going to hurt the ones who are confident. Yeah. So that's how I deal with it. But now, as I'm out on my own, I have my own company, I have my own business, and I do online courses and coaching, and I can actually focus on the women, because having a group of women together who have these same confidence issues and can kind of commiserate with each other, and they're like, yes, I know what you're talking about. It's very different from having a group of men and women together. So that's kind of my ideal solution for me.
And I can imagine that this lack of confidence doesn't only show in their English, but in their whole life.
And I wanted to point that out about the student that I worked with the social media example. She told me at the end of because I worked with her for 10 weeks. She told me at the end of the 10 weeks, she was like, this has changed my confidence in everything I do. She's like, I'm a better mother. I'm a better wife. I go out and it's easier to talk to people in all different situations, in Danish and in English, because of this. So I think it's really, you're doing your students a service by doing this, not only for their English, but for them as people. And I think that's, that's extra, but it's not a bad thing.
And we think that we are only English teachers.
Okay, so here's another good question. When you group students, for example, do you put confident students together or mix them with less confident students? So basic question. No, it's not. It's a really good question. I like mixing groups around. Sometimes I will put less confident students together, especially if it's like to work on, when they have to speak. And I know if I put a really confident student in that group, they'll take over the conversation. So I'll put the people who are a little slower to come up with responses or a little bit more timid, I might put them together. Oops. And I might even give different groups different assignments based on their confidence level. So one group might have to kind of research something. So I might put the stronger, or not necessarily stronger, but the more confident students together to research something and share what they found. Whereas the less confident students would have to discuss something along the same topic and then share what they discussed, so that they get that chance that they wouldn't normally have to kind of open up and get things out there. So sometimes, yes, I differentiate within the groups. It really depends on a lot of things. I go into companies sometimes and it's easy to group, sometimes I'll have people in the same class from different departments. So maybe this department works together, people from accounting over there, people from IT over there. But then another time I might have, okay, guys against girls, we're going to play a game, and or I might, put the confident students together and put the medium students together and put the really timid students together and give them each a secret assignment, or an exercise where they all have to do something different and then come together to work together and figure out, something. So it's really, again, this is for more experienced teachers. Once you've gotten used to the exercises, information gap exercises are great for this, where, they have to actually talk to each other. So yeah, it's, you can be really creative with it, but just being aware of it makes it really, brings it to the front of your mind when you're planning.
Yeah. And I'd like to go back to an earlier question, if you don't mind, Krisia, from the chat, about academic achievement.
Yeah.
There was a question about, it says, do you think that confidence goes hand in hand with the level of academic achievement? What if students are underachieving? Then how to boost their confidence?
And again, I think it comes back to kind of the coaching and figuring out why they're there. Why are they in your class? What are they trying to achieve? They may not be underachieving. Their goal may be to just barely pass your class so that they can get the mark that they need for everything else. You know what I mean? So figuring out what underachieving actually means is really important, because their goal may not be to ever use English.
Yeah.
And then is it up to us to push them to be better and better? I don't know. I mean, that's kind of I think that's outside of my, that's above my pay grade. But if I have students in my classroom who really don't care about learning English, is it worth my time and effort if I know, and they've told me that they don't care, and I've tried to kind of give them ideas for what they could do with their English, and they're still in that position? Then if they're underachieving, I'm going to let that slide, because that's achieving for them.
Yeah.
If your goal is to get barely pass and you're barely passing, you've achieved your goal. Well done. You know what I mean? But it comes back to, how much time are you willing to commit? How much energy, how much effort are you willing to put in? Yeah. So, and then again, you may have students who are underachieving for a completely different reason. They may be underachieving because they just don't feel like they can do this. They may have had bad experiences when they started learning English. So then it's really more into kind of getting down into it. And I like to do that with writing assignments about, your first English class. Tell me about a time where you felt like you were strong. Tell me about a time when you felt like you made a fool of yourself in English class, or tell me about it, and doing these as writing assignments lets them think about it. And then you could just ask, well, you know what? Is that actually, you said that you felt like everyone was laughing at you. Were they actually laughing at you? Would you be laughing at someone else who did that? Then realizing, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that's not really true. Actually, I could do this and it's okay. So, but again, it's kind of more advanced coaching.
Exactly, like that involves a cognitive shift.
Yeah, exactly. But I realized that, as soon as I started teaching for results, I started teaching rather than teaching to, fulfill the curriculum. I started teaching to get my students the results they wanted. And that's when all of this started to come into the way I teach. Because just fulfilling the curriculum is based on that idea that competence equals confidence. And really, so many of the students walk out of the classroom with the competence that they need, but without any confidence and no ability to use it in the real world. And that's a shame because we spent a lot of time and effort on them. Why not spend a little bit of time and effort in each lesson to make sure that they have that confidence and everybody wins?
Yeah.
There were a couple of questions throughout this about young students, and I don't think I've addressed them. Is your observation relevant for adult students only or also young learners? I think that was when I was talking about the difference in gender. I haven't spent enough time with enough young learners to be able to say if it's the same across these same lines as with adults. Maybe some of you who teach young learners could share if you've noticed any difference in confidence between the female and male students in your classroom. From my experience as a mother and with the friends of my kids, I have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. I definitely see the same differences from really, really young. And it's a shame, but that's the world that we're living in. There are these gender differences, these different expectations. Yeah.
Or what we believe about ourselves.
Yeah.
Our capabilities.
Yeah.
Right. Right. There is another question that I found in the chat. So it's about the possibility of coaching in classes that reach a really high number of students, like 25, 30 students.
And yeah, for sure. If you have to set a writing assignment, make it one of these things that find out about their goals or find out about their opportunities or find out about their realities or find out about their will. You can just do it in a writing assignment. And then it's no extra work for you. You already have to give a writing assignment, adjust it so that it's about one of these things. And then maybe as you introduce the assignment, you can say, think about these things and go through it. And they do the coaching for themselves. It's not about necessarily sitting face to face with the student and saying, so what are your goals? And let's do this. No, they can do this themselves. You can make this into a whole exercise, or you can just make it as simple as questions, or when they have to talk to each other, when they're practicing speaking, you just throw some of these questions in there to have them talk about them. So you can definitely do it with larger groups.
Right.
There was one that I saw about the teachers that don't have the coach personality. Do you have that one in front of you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So it says, do you think that some teachers may not have the coach, quote, quote, coach personality though? Can they still learn and apply the techniques successfully?
I love this question. When you say the coach personality, I think, I told you in the masterclass that when I first heard the word coach, it was like, I don't want to do that. Whatever that is, I don't like it. There's this mental image of what a coach is and what a coach does. But if you say, okay, let's put that aside. And I'm going to look at what my students' goals, realities, opportunities, and will are. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to look at that and I'm going to help them to make it clear. That's what it is. That's not a personality. That's just some things that you do. And anyone can do this. It doesn't matter. And the more that you make it your own, suit it to your teaching style. If you're kind of like I'm very kind of, my arms are waving all around the place. I go off on tangents and stuff in my classroom. That's how I am. And that's how I do my coaching. There are others who are very structured, very calm, very organized, and that's how they can do it. You can do it however you like. It's just these strategies. And I think the word coaching, mentoring scares people off. Don't be scared off. Look at these as strategies that you can use in your classroom that will help your students set their goals, look at their own reality and be realistic about it, look at their opportunities and their challenges, and then decide if they're going to do it or not, or decide how much work they're willing to do. That's it. So when you say coach, you don't have to have that, a whistle around your neck and have the coach personality. Your personality can become a coach personality. I hope that answers the question. Yeah, and again, I'm not a certified coach. This is just stuff that I've been doing. And then it was actually a coach that I was teaching who said, what you're doing is coaching, right? I'm like, no. And then she was like, yeah, it is. You're coaching me. I'm like, nah, no, I'm not. And I don't like that coaching thing. She's like, yeah, but I'm a coach. And I was like, oh, oops. So, but yeah, and then I started looking into it and I realized, yeah, that is what I'm doing. And so I kind of embraced it. But yeah, anyone can do it.
Yeah, this is great when you are open and genuinely, like, even curious. Actually, yeah. That's a good word. So how can I help? How can I serve that person?
Yeah.
Based on my own experience. And I can see that Gabi is raising her hand.
Oh, okay.
However, I am not the co-host because I
am. I guess I can bring her in. So do I just say allowed to talk?
Yes, please.
There we go. Gabby.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Krisia. Hi, Hedi. Sorry, I know you are about to wrap it up, but I just had to say this. When I mentioned, because it was my question, the question about the coach personality. And, when I said this, because as I'm listening to you, I'm beginning to feel that coaching is essentially teaching. I can't see any difference between coaching and good teaching. So every teacher is a coach. And now what I think is, do we need to even be aware of the fact that we are, that I'm a coach, okay? Like, because, I feel like if teachers are not coaches, okay, already, without even thinking about it, then no techniques will make them into coaches, if you know what I mean. So I feel like this is, I may be wrong, but I just feel that this coach personality is essentially a teacher personality. And if you are not already there, if you don't have it as a person, it's going to be very difficult for you to learn how to be a coach. But again, I may be wrong.
I don't know about right or wrong, but I think I'm going to kind of tweak what you said a bit, because I think, yes, as a teacher, we are already coaches, or we should be. Otherwise, why would you even get into this? But I think this idea of going beyond what we've been taught to do so that we can get our students the result they need is not about what kind of teacher you are, but about what kind of person you are. If you think that you're there to get your students the results that they want, and not just to tick all the boxes and fill in your timesheet at the end and get paid, then yeah, you can take on some strategies. You can use some strategies that will help you to do that. I think what I've offered are some tools that you can use, and anyone can use these. If you're not doing this and not thinking about student confidence, and you try a couple of these things, you're going to get some difference and some change in the confidence of your students. So I think it's not necessarily about labeling it coaching or saying, oh, you have to be like this or like that. But it's like, do you have the motivation to help your students to be more confident? And, and I think that's what it comes down to.
Because, again, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about myself, okay? And then trying to think, do I help my students be more confident? I don't even know, because this is the level of subconsciousness almost. I'm just in the classroom and I'm doing my best. So I guess I help my students to be more confident, but it's the level of it's the level where I don't reflect, if you know what I mean. So
yes,
I don't even like to think about myself as a coach because
yeah,
I'm because I'm a teacher. So this
yeah,
is the point I'm trying to make. And I just worry that perhaps there are personalities, there are teachers who may not want to be teachers. And this is how I mean the coach personality. Because
yeah.
if
I
you
see
want
what
to
you mean.
be a teacher, yeah, then you are a coach by default.
I disagree. I don't think that we are, I don't think that we have the kind of tools as teachers. I don't think we're given the tools right away to do these things that will really enable us to allow our students to clearly articulate their goals, to really look at the reality. We're not necessarily even asking them to buy into the course. We're not asking them to make any commitment to be there or to do anything. We're not taught to do that. This is something that if you want to do it, you have to do it yourself. You know, CELTA didn't teach me to do this.
No.
When I worked in English courses, that was not on the curriculum. So I think it is about taking another step beyond being a teacher. You can go in and teach the curriculum and do everything that you've been told to do and walk out, and you will have some students who walk out there confidently and others who have just been left behind, who have fallen through the cracks. So I kind of disagree with you there. I don't think it's automatic.
That's okay. It's fine. I like when people disagree with me. So I guess we will just leave it at that.
Okay.
Because I like when sessions actually end on this note of some kind of a disagreement. There are two views here, and it's lovely because this is how it should be, right? People should disagree.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. So back to you, Hedy. Thank you, Krisia.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a pleasure.